What if everything you thought you knew about history was just the surface, a carefully edited version of events, hiding far stranger truths beneath? For centuries, the past has been rewritten by secret discoveries, moments when a single artifact, document, or accidental find shattered what we believed was unshakable. These aren't just small corrections, they're seismic shifts, the kind that force us to question whose stories get preserved and whose get buried. Picture this: a dusty crate in an attic, a mislabeled museum shelf, or a shadowy corner of an ancient ruin suddenly revealing something that changes the game entirely. That's the power of a hidden truth. From lost civilizations to suppressed inventions, history is littered with moments where the official record was overturned by evidence that shouldn't have existed. Think about it. How many times have we been told a story only to learn years later that the real version was far more extraordinary? These discoveries don't just rewrite textbooks, they rewrite our understanding of human ambition, ingenuity, and sometimes deception. Who decides what gets remembered, and more importantly, what are we still missing? In this video, we're uncovering 30 of these world-changing moments, each one a ripple that grew into a tidal wave. We'll explore how a single buried artifact can dismantle an empire's legacy, how a forgotten letter can rewrite a hero's journey, and how secrets kept for centuries can finally come to light. This isn't just about the past, it's about the stories we inherit and the ones we're still piecing together. So buckle up, we're diving into the shadows of history, where the most fascinating truths are often the ones no one meant for us to find. One of the most jaw-dropping moments in archaeology came from a shipwreck off the coast of a tiny Greek island called Antikythera. In 1901, sponge divers stumbled upon a corroded lump of bronze buried under layers of ancient debris. At first glance, it seemed unremarkable, just another artifact among statues and pottery. But when researchers finally cracked open that lump decades later, they found something that shouldn't have existed. Gears, tiny, intricate bronze gears, arranged with such precision that they mirrored the movements of the stars and planets. This wasn't just an ancient clock. The Antikythera Mechanism, as it came to be known, was a 2,000-year-old astronomical calculator capable of predicting eclipses, tracking Olympic cycles, and mapping the wanderings of celestial bodies with eerie accuracy. Its complexity rivals that of 18th-century Swiss watches, yet here it was, a relic from a time when historians believed such technology was still millennia away. The implications were staggering. Whoever built this device possessed knowledge of mathematics, engineering, and astronomy far beyond what textbooks had ever credited to ancient Greece. Some scholars now argue it might have been the work of Hipparchus, a genius astronomer whose lost writings hinted at theories the mechanism brought to life. Others suspect it was a one-of-a-kind prototype, a glimpse of a technological path that history forgot. What's truly haunting is how close we came to never knowing about it. Had those sponge divers swum just a few feet to the left, or had the mechanism corroded completely, we'd still assume such sophistication was impossible in the ancient world. It makes you wonder how many other leaps of genius have been lost to time, buried under the weight of assumptions that we never thought to question. The Antikythera Mechanism didn't just rewrite history, it tore up the script entirely, proving that sometimes the past is far more advanced than we dare imagine. In 1947, a young Bedouin shepherd named Muhammad Eddi Hib was chasing a stray goat through the rocky cliffs near the Dead Sea when he made a discovery that would shake the foundations of religious history. Tossing a stone into a cave, he heard the unexpected sound of breaking pottery, and inside, hidden in clay jars for nearly 2,000 years, were the first of what we now call the Dead Sea Scrolls. These weren't just ordinary texts. The scrolls contained some of the oldest known copies of the Hebrew Bible, along with hymns, commentaries, and community rules from a Jewish sect that lived in isolation 2 centuries before the birth of Jesus. For scholars, it was like stumbling upon a time capsule, one that preserved voices from a pivotal moment in spiritual history, untouched by later edits or translations. The real bombshell: some passages contradicted long-held assumptions about the Bible's uniformity. Variations in wording, alternative versions of well-known stories, and even entirely unknown texts forced experts to confront how much had been lost or altered over centuries of copying and interpretation. Suddenly, the idea of a single, unchanging scripture began to unravel, revealing a far more complex tapestry of beliefs and traditions, but piecing together the truth wasn't easy. Over the next decade, more caves yielded fragments, some as small as a postage stamp, scattered across the desert like a divine jigsaw puzzle. Scholars spent decades matching edges, deciphering faded ink, and battling political tensions over access to the scrolls. At one point, a team even used infrared photography to read text that had become invisible to the naked eye. What emerged was a revelation. These weren't just relics of an obscure sect. They were proof that ancient Judaism was far more diverse than historians had imagined, with competing ideas about messiahs, rituals, and the end of days. For Christianity, the scrolls offered startling parallels, shared phrases, similar prophecies hinting at a shared cultural moment between the two faiths. Yet the most haunting question remains: how much more is still hidden? The Dead Sea Scrolls were found by pure chance. Without that wandering goat, they might still lie forgotten in their caves, their secrets forever lost. It's a reminder that history isn't a fixed story, it's a puzzle we're still assembling, one fragment at a time. The desert sands of Egypt had guarded their secrets for centuries until one slab of black granite shattered the silence. In 1799, French soldiers under Napoleon's command were reinforcing a crumbling fort near the town of Rosetta when a lieutenant spotted something strange protruding from the mud. What he pried loose would become the key to an entire civilization's lost voice: the Rosetta Stone. This wasn't just another artifact. The stone bore the same decree, a message praising Pharaoh Ptolemy V, carved in 3 scripts, elegant hieroglyphs at the top, a middle section of Demotic, the everyday script of ancient Egyptians, and ancient Greek at the bottom. For scholars, it was like finding a dictionary buried in time. Suddenly, they had a way to cross-reference a dead language with one they understood, but cracking the code wasn't instant. For 23 agonizing years, the stone became an intellectual battleground. Scholars across Europe pored over every groove, convinced the hieroglyphs were purely symbolic, until Jean-François Champollion, a linguist obsessed since childhood, noticed something others had missed. The oval frames around certain glyphs, called cartouches, seemed to enclose royal names, matching these to the Greek text's references to Ptolemy and later Cleopatra. He realized something revolutionary: hieroglyphs weren't just mystical pictures. They combined sound and meaning, a hybrid system as sophisticated as any modern alphabet. The impact was earth-shaking. Before the Rosetta Stone, Egypt's monuments were silent, their inscriptions meaningless squiggles to outsiders. After Champollion's breakthrough in 1822, temples and tombs began whispering their stories. Accounts of battles, tax records, even love poetry spilled from walls that had been mute for millennia. The pharaoh's world, once distorted by Greek and Roman historians, now spoke for itself. What makes this discovery so startling is how narrowly it happened. Napoleon's Egyptian campaign was a military disaster, but his team of savants, the scholars he brought along, documented everything. Had the stone been found a few feet deeper or crumbled to dust, we might still see hieroglyphs as impenetrable magic. Instead, one officer's sharp eyes and a linguist's stubborn curiosity tore the veil off an entire epoch. It's a reminder that history's greatest revelations often hinge on luck, obsession, and the willingness to question what everyone knows is impossible. In 1974, a group of farmers digging a well in China's Shaanxi province struck something far stranger than water: a life-sized clay head, its stern face staring back at them from the dirt. What they'd uncovered was the first soldier of an army buried for over 2,000 years, the Terracotta Warriors, a silent legion guarding the tomb of China's first emperor, Qin Shi Huang. This wasn't just a handful of statues. As archaeologists rushed to the site, they uncovered row after row of warriors, each one unique, with individualized armor, hairstyles, even facial expressions. Scholars estimate there are over 8,000 of them, along with hundreds of chariots and horses, all arranged in battle formation across 3 massive underground pits. The scale was staggering. Imagine an entire football field filled with stone soldiers, their weapons still sharp, their paint still faintly visible after centuries underground. But the real shock wasn't just the army's size, it was what it revealed about Qin Shi Huang's obsession with power. This was a ruler so afraid of death that he built a subterranean empire to protect him in the afterlife. Historical records had hinted at his paranoia, but the terracotta army proved it in clay and bronze. These weren't symbolic figures, they were a functional military, complete with generals, archers, and cavalry, all positioned to defend their emperor for eternity. Excavating them, though, has been a nightmare of fragile discoveries. The warriors were originally brightly painted, but exposure to air causes the pigments to flake off within minutes. Archaeologists now use humidifiers and chemicals to preserve the colors, working inch by inch to uncover each soldier without destroying the very details they're trying to save. Some pits remain unopened, their secrets guarded by booby traps described in ancient texts, crossbows rigged to fire at intruders, rivers of liquid mercury symbolizing imperial rivers. Perhaps most haunting is what hasn't been found yet. Qin Shi Huang's actual tomb remains untouched, a pyramid-like mound at the site's center. Ground-penetrating radar reveals a sprawling underground palace, complete with gemstone constellations and scale models of his kingdom, but no one's dared open it. The risk of damaging irreplaceable artifacts is too high for now. Every year, new technologies inch us closer to answers, teasing the possibility that the greatest treasures and the darkest secrets still lie waiting in the dark. What began as a farmer's chance strike with a shovel rewrote our understanding of ancient China's ambition. The terracotta army isn't just a collection of statues, it's a message carved in clay, a declaration that even in death, power demands an army. And somewhere beneath that silent battlefield, the emperor's voice still waits to be heard. Some books whisper their secrets, others defy translation entirely. Tucked away in a vault at Yale University lies what might be the world's most stubborn mystery, the Voynich Manuscript, a 200-page puzzle penned in an alphabet no one has ever seen. Carbon dated to the early 15th century, this bizarre tome is filled with curling script that flows like a language yet resists every attempt to crack its code. But the writing is only half the enigma. Flip through its fragile vellum pages and you'll encounter illustrations that veer from the unsettling to the outright impossible, plants with bulbous roots that match no known species, nude women bathing in emerald green pools fed by labyrinthine pipes, and constellations that don't align with any historical star charts. For over a century, cryptographers, linguists, and even wartime codebreakers have thrown themselves at the manuscript's riddles. Some theories sound almost plausible. Could it be a lost herbal manual, its plants distorted by an artist working from descriptions rather than life? Others spiral into the fantastical claims of extraterrestrial origins or alchemical ciphers meant to hide the secret of immortality. The most tantalizing clue came in 2019 when a scholar suggested the script might be Proto-Romance, a vanished vernacular bridging Latin and modern Italian. Yet even this hypothesis crumbles under scrutiny, leaving the text as inscrutable as ever. What makes the Voynich manuscript so maddening is how close it feels to making sense. The text follows patterns, word repetitions, sentence structures that hint at a real language, not random gibberish. Advanced statistical analysis shows it mirrors linguistic properties found in known tongues, yet every proposed translation dissolves into nonsense. Even its illustrations taunt us, those unidentifiable plants. Some researchers argue they're encoded representations of real flora, their features scrambled to obscure their medicinal uses from rivals. The zodiac section, with its fantastical nymphs and unplaceable stars, might be an allegory for spiritual transformation, or just an inside joke we'll never get. Then there's the hoax theory. Could some Renaissance trickster have crafted an elaborate fake to swindle a wealthy patron? The manuscript's parchment and inks are undeniably period appropriate, but its content is so odd that even forgery seems inadequate as an explanation. Why spend years inventing a fake language and hundreds of detailed, utterly original drawings just to dupe one person? Unless, of course, the real purpose was even stranger, a private meditation, a madman's diary, or a visual representation of dreams. The truth may lie in the manuscript's very survival. Unlike the Dead Sea Scrolls or Rosetta Stone, it wasn't buried by time or war. It passed through the hands of emperors, chemists, and book dealers for centuries, each owner perhaps as baffled as we are. That continuity suggests someone, somewhere, believed it had value even if they couldn't read a word. Today, high-powered algorithms scan its pages for patterns. I might catch that humans miss, but so far silence. The Voynich Manuscript remains a locked door, a reminder that some histories refuse to be rewritten because we still haven't learned how to ask them the right questions. In the crumbling ruins of Nineveh, beneath the sands of what's now modern-day Iraq, lay a treasure far more valuable than gold, a library forgotten for over 2,000 years. When British archaeologist Austen Henry Layard began excavating the Assyrian capital in the 1850s, he expected to find palaces and temples. Instead, he stumbled upon the library of Ashurbanipal, a 7th century BC time capsule that would rewrite the story of human civilization. The scale of the discovery was overwhelming. Over 30,000 clay tablets lay in fragments, many shattered by war, fire, and time. But what survived was astonishing royal decrees, legal contracts, medical texts, and most famously, the earliest known version of the Epic of Gilgamesh. This wasn't just a random collection of records, it was the deliberate work of King Ashurbanipal, a ruler obsessed with knowledge. He'd sent scribes across his empire to copy every text they could find, building a repository of Mesopotamian thought unlike anything the ancient world had seen. Deciphering the library's contents was like reassembling a jigsaw puzzle where half the pieces were missing. Many tablets were baked brittle by the fires that destroyed Nineveh in 612 BC, their surfaces flaking away at a touch. Early excavators, unaware of their fragility, packed them in crates with little padding, causing further damage. But even in fragments, the texts were revolutionary. The Epic of Gilgamesh, for instance, revealed a flood myth eerily similar to Noah's Ark, written 1,000 years before the Bible. What made Ashurbanipal's library truly groundbreaking was its diversity. Alongside epic poetry were practical manuals, recipes for glue, treatments for ear infections, even a hilarious complaint letter from a merchant furious about receiving subpar copper ingots. These weren't just royal propaganda, they were snapshots of everyday life in a world most thought lost to myth. Perhaps the most poignant detail, Ashurbanipal himself boasted in one tablet that he could read cryptic Sumerian texts, a skill even most scribes of his era had lost. In collecting these works, he wasn't just hoarding knowledge, he was racing against time to preserve a culture already slipping into obscurity. Today, the library's legacy lives on in the British Museum, where teams still labor to piece together its broken tablets using 3D imaging and multispectral photography. Each reassembled line offers another glimpse into a world where history, legend, and daily life intertwined, proving that even an empire's collapse couldn't silence the voices Ashurbanipal worked so hard to save. The desert had swallowed kings before, but Tutankhamun's tomb was different. It waited. For over 3,000 years, beneath the scorching sands of Egypt's Valley of the Kings, its sealed doorway lay untouched until one stubborn archaeologist's gamble paid off. On November 4, 1922, Howard Carter's team struck stone where they expected rubble. As candles flickered in the stale air, Carter peered through the tiny breach he'd made and uttered the most famous words in archaeology. Yes, wonderful things. What he saw defied belief. Unlike every other royal tomb, looted barren by thieves, this one was a time capsule of gold, art, and ritual. The antechamber alone was a riot of treasures, chariots disassembled for the afterlife, alabaster jars of sacred oils, statues of gods with watchful obsidian eyes. And at the center, guarded by two life-sized ebony sentinels, the doorway to the burial chamber itself. When Carter finally unsealed it 2 years later, the sight took his breath away. A golden shrine, nested like a Russian doll within 3 others, encased the boy king's sarcophagus. Inside lay Tutankhamun himself, his mummified face shielded by that now iconic golden mask, its lapis lazuli and quartz inlays gleaming as if freshly crafted. But the real revelation wasn't the bling, it was the story the objects told. Every artifact served a purpose in the intricate dance of death and rebirth. Tiny figurines called shabtis stood ready to labor for the king in the afterlife. A dagger with an iron blade, a metal so rare in Bronze Age Egypt it may have come from a meteorite, hinted at interstellar connections. Even the tomb's hastily plastered walls, covered in paintings that flaked at a touch, revealed a shocking truth. Tutankhamun died suddenly, likely from infection or injury, forcing his subjects to bury him in a tomb probably meant for someone else. Then came the so-called curse, when Lord Carnarvon, Carter's financial backer, died months after the opening, followed by a string of other deaths. Newspapers spun tales of a pharaoh's vengeance. The truth was far less dramatic. Carnarvon had chronic health issues, and statistical analysis later showed the mortality rate among excavation team members was normal. But the legend stuck, fueled by Victorian fascination with the occult and the eerie coincidence of Tutankhamun's burial chamber containing a reed flute. When scientists played a replica 3,000 years later, its shrill note sounded uncannily like a human scream. What makes Tutankhamun's tomb uniquely transformative is its imperfections. Other pharaohs left grander monuments, but their plundered tombs revealed only fragments. Here, every smudge of fingerprint in drying paint, every hastily repaired artifact, whispered of real people grappling with death's chaos. Even the flowers, wilted garlands of cornflowers and olive leaves placed around the coffin, spoke of fleeting grief in a civilization obsessed with eternity. Today, modern scans suggest hidden chambers may still lurk behind the tomb's walls, perhaps holding Nefertiti's long-lost remains. But even if they're empty, Tutankhamun's legacy endures. His treasures didn't just fill museums, they shattered our cartoonish image of Egypt as a land of impersonal monuments. In that cramped, glittering tomb, we met the ancients not as distant gods but as humans, fragile, ambitious, and desperately hoping to be remembered. From high above the desert plains of southern Peru, the land seems to whisper secrets in bold strokes, gigantic shapes of spiders, hummingbirds, and geometric spirals carved into the earth so large they're invisible from the ground. These are the Nazca Lines, a mystery that only fully revealed itself when humanity took to the skies. For centuries, locals knew of strange markings in the soil, but it wasn't until commercial flights began crossing the region in the 1920s that pilots noticed the staggering scale of these designs. Some stretch over 1,200 feet long, their crisp lines untouched by erosion in one of the driest places on Earth. The question isn't just how the Nazca people created these geoglyphs between 200 BC and 600 CE, though that's staggering enough. Without aerial views or modern tools, they meticulously scraped away the dark top layer of desert pavement to expose the lighter earth beneath, designing figures so precise that walking alongside them offers no hint of their form. But why? Some researchers argue they were ritual pathways, walked during ceremonies to summon rain in a land where water was more precious than gold. Others see an astronomical map with lines pointing to solstice sunrises or constellations vital to planting cycles. Then there's the theory that they were meant for the gods' eyes alone, offerings so vast only deities floating above could appreciate them. Modern technology has uncovered even stranger layers to the puzzle. Satellite imaging and drones revealed previously unknown lines in 2020, including a sprawling feline figure hidden on a hillside. Soil analysis shows the Nazca used a technique called reverse weathering, piling stones along the edges to prevent wind from blurring their work. But perhaps the most haunting clue lies in the Cahuachi pyramids nearby, a ceremonial center where archaeologists found potsherds depicting the very creatures etched into the desert, suggesting the lines were part of a sprawling sacred landscape. Now, these fragile marvels face threats no ancient engineer could foresee. Climate change has brought uncharacteristic heavy rains to the Nazca Desert, triggering mudslides that gouged trenches through a hummingbird glyph in 2022. Illegal mining and tire tracks from rogue drivers scar the unprotected edges. Conservationists race to document the lines with 3D scans while battling a painful irony. The same dry climate that preserved the designs for millennia now makes them vulnerable to sudden weather extremes. The Nazca Lines force us to reckon with a paradox. The better we understand them, the more enigmatic they become. They weren't meant to be seen by mortals, yet today they're studied by satellites. They survived empires and conquests only to tremble under the weight of modern neglect. And somewhere between the spider's outstretched legs and the astronaut figure's helmet-like head, a design some insist resembles a shaman mid-vision, we're left wondering if the Nazca were drawing messages we still haven't learned to read. Sometimes the most explosive historical revelations come wrapped in quiet mystery, like a single sheet of parchment that could rewrite the story of continents. In 1957, a small, nondescript map surfaced in a European bookshop, its faded ink tracing coastlines that should have been impossible. Labeled Vinland, it showed a sliver of North America's eastern shore, drawn according to its text in the mid-15th century, decades before Columbus set sail. If genuine, the Vinland Map was smoking gun proof that Norse explorers had not only reached North America, but shared that knowledge with medieval Europe. But from the moment it entered the public eye, this fragile document ignited a firestorm of doubt that still burns today. The map's case seemed strong at first glance. Its depiction of Greenland matched Norse sagas describing Leif Erikson's voyages around the year 1000. And its wormholes aligned with a medieval manuscript it was found alongside. Even its Latin inscription declaring Vikings discovered a new land extremely fertile and even having vines, hence Vinland, echoed accounts from the Icelandic Vinland sagas. Supporters argued it was a copy of lost Norse charts, perhaps drawn for the Council of Basel in 1440. Then came the science. In 1974, microscopic analysis revealed the ink contained anatase, a form of titanium dioxide so rare in medieval pigments that its presence seemed damning. Critics claimed it pointed to 20th century forgery, since anatase only became commonly used after 1920. But the plot thickened in 2018 when high-resolution scans detected trace elements of medieval iron gall ink beneath the anatase layer. Could a forger have mixed old and new materials to fool experts, or was the anatase contamination from modern restoration attempts? The parchment itself deepened the riddle. Radiocarbon dating placed the sheepskin between 1420 and 1440, exactly when the map claimed to be made. Yet its binding residues matched a 15th century book, suggesting it might have been rebound later. Even stranger, the map's wormhole patterns align perfectly with those in a genuine medieval volume, hinting they were stored together for centuries. What makes the Vinland Map so fascinating isn't just the forensic back and forth, it's what's at stake. If real, it rewires our understanding of global exploration, revealing that Europe's elite knew of lands across the Atlantic long before Columbus. If fake, it's one of history's most audacious hoaxes, fooling institutions like Yale University, which purchased it in 1965 for decades. Perhaps the truth lies somewhere in between. Some scholars propose the map could be a 16th century forgery, not a modern one, crafted during the age of exploration to bolster Scandinavian claims in the New World. Others note that even if the ink is suspect, the geographic accuracy of its Vinland outline is uncannily precise for something drawn without satellite imagery. Like all great historical mysteries, the Vinland Map refuses to surrender easy answers. Locked in its Yale vault, it remains a Rorschach test for historians, proof or fraud, depending on who's looking. And that's the thrill, because somewhere beneath the ink and wormholes lies either a revolutionary truth or a deception so brilliant it's haunted us for generations. Either way, it forces us to ask how much of history is still hiding in plain sight. Deep in the basement of Baghdad's National Museum sits a cluster of unassuming clay jars, each about the size of a fist, sealed with asphalt and cradling a copper cylinder and iron rod. Found in 1936 near the ancient village of Kujat Rabu, these artifacts look like ordinary storage vessels at first glance. But when German archaeologist Wilhelm Koenig examined them closely, he proposed something electrifying. These could be the remains of a 2,000-year-old battery. The design is eerily simple yet effective. Fill the jar with an acidic liquid like vinegar or grape juice, and the interaction between the iron rod and copper cylinder could generate a small electrical charge, enough perhaps to electroplate thin layers of gold or silver onto objects. Koenig's theory gained traction when replicas built in laboratories produced around 1 volt of electricity, comparable to a modern watch battery. Suddenly, these humble jars suggested the Parthians or Sasanians might have dabbled in electrochemistry centuries before Alessandro Volta invented the first recognized battery in 1800. But not everyone is convinced. Skeptics argue there's no direct evidence these jars were used for electrical purposes. No wires, no electroplated artifacts, no contemporary descriptions of such technology have been found alongside them. Some propose they were simply sacred containers for storing scrolls, with the asphalt acting as a preservative seal. Others note that even if they could generate electricity, their low output would have made them impractical for anything beyond parlor tricks or religious rituals, like creating tingling sensations during temple ceremonies to simulate divine contact. The mystery deepens when you consider the artifact's context. Found near Ctesiphon, a crossroads of ancient trade and knowledge, their origins blur between Persian, Mesopotamian, and Hellenistic influences. Could they be remnants of a forgotten scientific tradition, one that fused Greek theoretical knowledge with Middle Eastern craftsmanship? Or were they a dead-end experiment, a spark of insight that flickered out before it could catch fire? Modern experiments add fuel to the debate. In 2003, a team from Mythbusters built working replicas, confirming the jars could indeed electroplate a small statue with gold, though the process was agonizingly slow. Meanwhile, archaeologists point out that ancient gold plating techniques, like mercury amalgamation, were already well established without needing electricity. What makes the Baghdad battery so tantalizing isn't just the question of what it was, it's the possibility of what else might be missing. If these jars were batteries, where are the tools they powered? The notes explaining their use, their very isolation in the archaeological record, makes them either a revolutionary outlier or a red herring dressed in circumstantial evidence. Perhaps the truth lies in between. Maybe the jars were batteries but served a purpose we've yet to imagine, not for plating metal but for medicine, like the electric fish therapies described by Roman physicians. Or perhaps they're a reminder that history isn't a straight line of progress, but a maze of false starts and lost genius. Either way, these quiet clay vessels challenge our assumptions about ancient innovation. proving that the past might have been far more charged than we ever suspected. Buried beneath a dusty hill in southeastern Turkey lies a site so ancient it shouldn't exist. When German archaeologist Klaus Schmidt first brushed away the earth from Göbekli Tepe in 1994, he uncovered not just another ruin, but a bombshell that would upend our understanding of human history. Towering limestone pillars, some weighing over 16 tons, carved with intricate foxes, scorpions, and vultures, stood in precise circles, their T-shaped forms eerily humanoid. The real shock: carbon dating placed their construction around 9,600 BCE, over 6,000 years before Stonehenge and 7,000 years before the Great Pyramids. This wasn't just old, it was from an era when textbooks insisted humans were nomadic hunter-gatherers, barely scraping by without permanent settlements, let alone monumental architecture. What makes Göbekli Tepe so revolutionary isn't just its age, but what it reveals about the birth of civilization. For decades, historians believed agriculture came first, that only after humans domesticated crops and animals could they afford the luxury of organized religion and complex society. Yet here was a lavish ritual site built by people who still hunted wild gazelle and gathered wild grains. The pillars, transported from quarries over a mile away without wheels or draft animals, required hundreds of workers to carve and erect, proof that hunter-gatherers could mobilize labor on a staggering scale. Some researchers now argue it was the other way around, that the need to feed gatherings at sacred sites like Göbekli Tepe may have spurred the invention of farming. The site's celestial alignments add another layer of intrigue. Certain pillars seem positioned to mark the summer solstice, while others may track the cycle of the North Star. One pillar, nicknamed the Vulture Stone, bears a carving of a scorpion alongside a cluster of dots that some scholars interpret as a depiction of the constellation Scorpio, suggesting these ancient builders were mapping the heavens millennia before the Babylonians. Even the layout feels deliberate: 20 circular enclosures, many buried intentionally around 8,000 BCE, as if sealing away a sacred tradition too potent to leave exposed. Debates still rage over who these people were and why they vanished. No residential structures have been found nearby, hinting that Göbekli Tepe was a pilgrimage site, drawing clans from across the region. The lack of defensive walls suggests a rare period of cooperation, or perhaps a society so confident in its beliefs it feared no invasion. Then, around 8,000 BCE, the site was carefully buried under thousands of tons of soil, preserved like a time capsule for 12 millennia. Göbekli Tepe forces us to confront a humbling truth: civilization's origins may be far older and far stranger than we ever imagined. It's not just a temple, it's a challenge carved in stone to every assumption about how culture begins. And somewhere beneath those buried circles, the whispers of a forgotten world still wait to be heard. The year was 1939, and as Europe teetered on the brink of war, a self-taught archaeologist named Basil Brown knelt in the dirt of an English estate called Sutton Hoo, brushing soil from what he thought was a simple Anglo-Saxon cemetery. Then his shovel struck wood, not just any wood, but the ghostly outline of an 89-foot-long ship buried for 13 centuries beneath a silent field. This wasn't a grave, it was a time machine. What emerged from that Suffolk soil would shatter the myth of the Dark Ages as a time of cultural collapse. The ship's burial chamber held treasures fit for a king, literally. A gleaming gold belt buckle the size of a dinner plate, intricate shoulder clasps inlaid with garnets, a parade helmet with a face mask so lifelike it seemed to breathe, and a ceremonial lyre for singing tales of the dead. But the showstopper was a purse lid adorned with intricate gold filigree and cloisonné, its craftsmanship so precise it could rival modern jewelers. These weren't the relics of primitive warlords. They were the trappings of a sophisticated society with trade connections stretching from Scandinavia to the Middle East. Forensic analysis revealed even more startling details. The ship had been dragged a third of a mile from the nearby River Deben, a feat requiring hundreds of laborers, then buried under an artificial hill visible for miles, a statement of power as bold as any pyramid. The absence of a body only deepened the mystery. Some argue it belonged to King Riedwald of East Anglia, a 7th century ruler who balanced Christian conversion with pagan traditions. Others point to chemical traces suggesting the corpse dissolved in the acidic soil, leaving only a shadow where a king once lay. Enter Netflix's The Dig, which immortalized Brown's race against time as storm clouds of World War II gathered. The film captures the quiet drama of the excavation, the class tensions between Brown and Cambridge academics, the looming threat of bombings that forced the team to rebury some treasures in London tube stations. But the true climax came when restorers pieced together a shattered silver bowl, revealing Byzantine stamps proving it was made in Constantinople. Suddenly, Sutton, who wasn't just a local king's tomb, it was a window into a continent-wide network of diplomacy, art, and ideas flourishing amid so-called darkness. What makes Sutton so transformative is how it redefined an entire era. Before its discovery, historians assumed post-Roman Britain had fractured into isolated tribes. But the ship's cargo, coins from Francia, textiles dyed with Mediterranean pigments, even a ceremonial whetstone that may have been a scepter, painted a different picture, a vibrant world where Anglo-Saxon rulers commanded respect across oceans. Today, the treasures reside in the British Museum, but the site still hums with secrets. Ground-penetrating radar hints at more mounds yet unexplored, while modern metallurgists marvel at the lost techniques behind the goldwork. Sutton didn't just give us artifacts, it gave us back a lost chapter of human brilliance, proving that even in ages we call dark, light persists in the hands of those who know where to dig. Standing sentinel on one of the most remote islands on Earth, the stone giants of Rapa Nui, better known as Easter Island, have stared mutely across the Pacific for centuries. These are the Moai, nearly 900 towering statues carved from compressed volcanic ash, some weighing as much as 80 tons. But their imposing presence hides a deeper riddle. How did a society with no wheels, no metal tools, and no large animals transport these colossal figures across miles of rugged terrain? And why, by the time European explorers arrived in 1722, were so many of them found toppled face first into the dirt? For decades, the dominant theory suggested the islanders used log rollers to drag the Moai from Rono Raraku, the volcanic quarry where most were carved. But recent experiments turned that idea on its head. When researchers tried replicating the process, they found something remarkable: the statue's unique design, with their curved bases and forward-leaning posture, allowed them to walk. With teams rocking them side to side using ropes, the Moai could have been maneuvered upright in a staggering display of coordination, almost as if the islanders made their gods stroll across the land. Indigenous oral histories even speak of the statues moving with mana, a spiritual energy. Could this have been a cultural memory of the technique? Yet the Moai's journey is only half the mystery. By the 18th century, many lay broken, their red stone topknots scattered like fallen crowns. Early theories blamed tribal wars, but modern archaeology paints a more complex picture. Soil analysis reveals that Rapa Nui wasn't always the barren grassland we see today. Pollen samples show evidence of lush palm forests that once covered the island, forests systematically cleared, likely to transport Moai and to create farmland for a booming population. This ecological collapse didn't happen overnight. Studies of ancient garbage heaps tell a story of slow desperation. As trees vanished, soil eroded, and crop yields dropped, islanders turned to smaller and smaller fish, then to rats, and finally to each other. Bone evidence shows a spike in violent trauma during this period, while oral histories speak of clans deliberately defacing rival Moai, chipping away their eyes to blind their spiritual power. But the most surprising twist: the islanders didn't vanish. Instead, they adapted. When European ships arrived, they found not a collapsed society but a transformed one that had abandoned Moai construction and shifted to a birdman cult centered on the island's one remaining resource, seabird eggs. The Rapa Nui people had traded monolithic gods for a more sustainable faith, proving resilience in the face of self-inflicted catastrophe. Today, the Moai stand as silent witnesses to a cautionary tale about resource management, but also to human ingenuity. Their empty eyes seem to ask not just how they were moved, but why, and what happens when a society's ambitions outpace its environment. The answer, carved into Easter Island's windswept slopes, might be more relevant now than ever. Hidden in the rugged hills of Georgia, a small town called Dmanisi held bones that would rewrite the story of human evolution. In the late 1990s, archaeologists uncovered 5 remarkably well-preserved skulls buried beneath the ruins of a medieval fortress, skulls that dated back an astonishing 1.8 million years. These weren't just any ancient remains, they belonged to some of the earliest humans to wander out of Africa, and they shattered long-held assumptions about our ancestors' journey across the globe. What made the Dmanisi skulls so revolutionary was their surprising diversity. One had a heavy brow ridge and a long face, resembling classic Homo erectus fossils from Africa. Another looked almost delicate with a smaller, more rounded skull. The variations were so extreme that if these bones had been found on different continents, they might have been classified as separate species. Yet here they were, buried side by side, proving that early human populations were far more physically diverse than anyone had guessed, even more startling. The smallest brain case held only about half the volume of later Homo erectus skulls, evidence that you didn't need a big brain to migrate across continents. This tiny group of fossils single-handedly upended 2 major theories. First, it suggested that the first wave of human migration out of Africa happened much earlier than previously thought, not by highly evolved superhumans, but by small-brained pioneers who were tougher and more adaptable than we ever imagined. Second, it challenged the traditional habit of naming every slightly different fossil as a new species. Before Dmanisi, paleontologists had split early human fossils into multiple categories: Homo habilis, Homo rudolfensis, Homo ergaster. But the Dmanisi skulls, with their wild variation all in one place, hinted that early humans might have been as physically diverse as modern humans. No need for separate species labels. The site itself added another layer of intrigue. Dmanisi wasn't some lush paradise, it was a harsh, seasonal landscape where winters were cold and predators like saber-toothed cats lurked nearby. Yet these early humans thrived, leaving behind stone tools and animal bones with cut marks that showed they were skilled butchers. One skull even bore teeth marks from a carnivore attack, suggesting survival was far from guaranteed. Perhaps the most mind-bending discovery came when researchers digitally reconstructed the brain case of one individual. Despite its small size, the brain showed signs of advanced development in areas linked to tool use and social cognition. These weren't primitive brutes, they were problem solvers, explorers who crossed mountains and deserts with nothing but stone knives and sheer grit. The Dmanisi skulls force us to rethink what it means to be human. If a band of small-brained, wildly diverse hominins could trek thousands of miles into unknown lands, then our ancestors' story isn't one of steady, linear progress. It's a tale of experimentation, of many shapes and strategies, most of which faded into extinction, leaving just one lineage to inherit the earth. And buried beneath that Georgian hillside, we found proof that the family tree might have been far bushier and far stranger than we ever dared to assume. For centuries, it lay hidden in the shadows of a cathedral, a 14-foot-long linen cloth bearing the faint, haunting imprint of a crucified man. The Shroud of Turin, revered by millions as the burial cloth of Jesus Christ, became history's most controversial artifact the moment it stepped into the scientific spotlight. On one side, believers point to the eerie precision of its bloodstains matching the wounds described in the Gospels, and the inexplicable photo-negative-like image of a face that wasn't understood until the invention of photography. On the other, skeptics demand empirical proof, igniting a collision between faith and science that still rages today. The turning point came in 1988, when 3 independent labs carbon-dated small samples of the shroud. The results sent shockwaves through the religious and academic worlds. The linen traced back to between 1260 and 1390, firmly medieval, and seemingly debunking its connection to biblical times. But within years, critics surfaced with a bombshell objection. The tested samples came from a repaired corner of the cloth, where medieval nuns had reportedly rewoven threads to mend fire damage. Could patches of newer material have contaminated the dating? Enter 21st century microscopy. Advanced textile analysis in 2019 revealed cotton fibers mixed with the linen, something no self-respecting first-century Jewish weaver would have done, given strict purity laws. But it's exactly what you'd expect from a medieval repair job. Even more compelling, chemical studies detected vanillin, a compound found in flax that degrades over time. Ancient linen should have none left, yet the shroud's main body tested negative, suggesting it's far older than the carbon-dated edges. Then there's the image itself. No one has ever replicated how it formed, not with paint, acid, or scorching. The coloration penetrates only the topmost fibers like a perfect surface burn. In 2009, an Italian scientist's experiments with ultraviolet lasers came close, but required precision beyond medieval technology. Stranger still, the bloodstains contain hemoglobin and bilirubin consistent with torture, and the wounds align with Roman flagrum whips and crucifixion practices. Even the pollen grains trapped in the fibers include species native to Jerusalem. The shroud's enigma forces us to confront the limits of both science and belief. For every study that dismisses it, another offers tantalizing contradictions. Perhaps the truth lies not in absolutes, but in the questions it keeps raising about memory, about devotion, and about how an object can defy explanation for centuries while drawing millions to gaze upon a face wrapped in mystery. In the steamy jungles of Mexico's Gulf Coast, a discovery in the 1940s would force historians to rethink everything they knew about the America's earliest civilization. Workers clearing land for a new plantation stumbled upon something utterly bizarre: massive stone heads, some towering 9 feet tall and weighing up to 20 tons, their faces flattened, thick-lipped, and staring stoically into the distance. These were the Olmec colossal heads, and their very existence shattered the timeline of Mesoamerican history. The first shock was their age. Carved around 900 BC, centuries before the Maya or Aztec empires rose, these heads proved the Olmec weren't just another ancient culture. They were the mother culture, the foundational society from which later Mesoamerican civilizations sprang. Each head was sculpted from a single block of basalt, a volcanic rock quarried from mountains over 50 miles away. How did they transport these monoliths without wheels or pack animals? The prevailing theory suggests they floated them on rafts along river networks, an engineering feat that speaks to the Olmec sophistication. But it wasn't just their scale that sparked debate. It was their features. With broad noses, full lips, and rounded cheeks, the heads bore a striking resemblance to African facial structures. This led to wild speculation in the mid-20th century about transatlantic contact long before Columbus. Were the Olmec proof of ancient African voyages to the Americas? Mainstream scholars pushed back, pointing to genetic and archaeological evidence showing no such contact. Instead, they argued the heads likely depicted local rulers, their features exaggerated to convey authority or even divine status. Modern 3D facial reconstruction work supports this, showing the sculptures align closely with indigenous skulls found at Olmec sites. The heads also hint at a society obsessed with identity and power. Each one wears a distinctive helmet, some adorned with jaguar motifs or elaborate headdresses, symbols that later appear in Maya and Aztec art. One theory suggests they represent revered ballgame players, a sport central to Olmec ritual life. Others believe they're portraits of kings commissioned to immortalize their rule. The truth may never be fully known, thanks to the Olmec's frustrating habit of burying or mutilating their monuments, perhaps during regime changes or as part of sacred rituals. What makes these heads truly transformative is how they rewrote the narrative of the Americas. Before their discovery, historians assumed complex societies here were late bloomers compared to Egypt or Mesopotamia. The Olmec proved otherwise, revealing a civilization with urban planning, writing systems. Their cryptic glyphs may be the earliest in the Americas, and even a form of rubber processing centuries before anyone else in the region. 17 heads have been found so far, each with its own enigmatic expression. Some smirk, some scowl. One, known as El Rey, gazes skyward as if waiting for a sign. They're more than art, they're a challenge carved in stone, daring us to unravel the secrets of a people who shaped a continent's destiny and then vanished, leaving only these silent giants to guard their legacy. In the quiet Suffolk countryside of 1992, a man named Eric Laws swung his metal detector over a field, hoping to find a lost wedding ring, and instead struck one of the greatest treasures in British history. The signal was so strong it nearly overwhelmed his device. Just beneath the surface lay a rotting oak chest, its contents spilling out in a dazzling cascade. Thousands of gold and silver coins, stacks of silver spoons, delicate gold jewelry studded with garnets, and even a tiny pepper pot shaped like an empress's head. This was the Hoxne hoard, the largest cache of late Roman treasure ever discovered in Britain. 15,000 artifacts buried around 410 CE, at the very moment Rome's grip on the island was slipping away. Every object tells a story of luxury and fear. The coins alone span 40 emperors, their faces tracing Rome's chaotic 4th century, some so freshly minted they'd barely circulated before being buried. The jewelry includes intricate body chains likely worn by aristocratic women, folded carefully as if packed in haste. Most haunting is the pepper pot, a whimsical yet functional luxury item proving Britain's elite still imported spices from India even as the empire crumbled. Together, they paint a portrait of unimaginable wealth and someone desperate enough to hide it all. Why was such fortune abandoned? The hoard's burial coincides with the collapse of Roman rule in Britain as legions withdrew to defend the crumbling heartland. Barbarian raids from the north and east sent waves of panic through wealthy villas. One theory suggests a local magistrate buried the treasure during such an attack, intending to retrieve it once the danger passed, but never returned. The chest's careful placement near a post hole hints it might have been marked, the landowner's secret map lost to time. Another chilling possibility, the owner was killed or enslaved during the violence, their fate sealing the hoard's fate for 16 centuries. Forensic archaeology adds eerie details. The coins wear patterns suggest they were savings accumulated over generations, not plunder. Soil analysis shows the chest was buried in a single event, not gradually hidden. And the absence of iron tools or everyday items implies this wasn't a blacksmith's stash. It was a curated selection of portable wealth, the kind you'd grab when fleeing. The Hoxne hoard forces us to confront a pivotal moment when history turned. Rome didn't fall in a day, but in countless small tragedies, like this one where someone's entire life's value vanished into the Suffolk clay. Today, the treasure sits in the British Museum, its pepper pot becoming an icon of Roman Britain's twilight. Yet the most poignant artifact might be the chest's rusted iron hinges, still twisted from the moment it was sealed, a silent scream from a world on the edge of forgetting. In a dusty corner of Istanbul's Topkapi Palace, a fragment of parchment lay forgotten for centuries until it resurfaced in 1929, sending shockwaves through the world of cartography. This was the Piri-Reis map, drawn in 1513 by an Ottoman admiral who claimed to have compiled it from ancient source charts, including those used by Christopher Columbus. At first glance, it was a masterpiece of medieval navigation, tracing the coasts of Europe, Africa, and the Americas with uncanny precision. But the real bombshell lay at the bottom of the page, a landmass eerily resembling Antarctica, drawn with jagged coastlines and, most bafflingly, no ice. How could a 16th-century map depict a continent buried under miles of glacial ice for at least 6,000 years? Conspiracy theorists seized on this detail, arguing the map proved the existence of a lost super-civilization, perhaps the mythical Atlanteans, with advanced knowledge of geography. Some even claimed the Ottomans had access to extraterrestrial cartography. The map's annotations fueled the fire. Piri Reis himself wrote that he'd relied on 20 source maps and Mappa Mundi dating back to Alexander the Great, hinting at forgotten repositories of ancient knowledge. But modern cartographers have a different take. When researchers overlaid the Piri Reis map with modern projections, they noticed something startling. Its Antarctica aligns suspiciously well with the eastern coast of South America, just mirrored and distorted. The map's southern landmass might actually be a crude amalgamation of Brazil's coastline and speculative geography, a common practice among early cartographers, filling in blanks with educated guesses. As for the ice-free detail, the map lacks critical features like the Antarctic Peninsula, and its rivers and mountains bear no relation to the continent's actual topography. The most compelling debunking came from ice core data. Antarctica's coasts have been glaciated since at least 4000 BCE, meaning no human could have seen them ice-free without technology millennia ahead of its time. Even if some pre-Ottoman seafarers had stumbled upon Antarctica, they'd have encountered an impenetrable wall of ice, not the navigable coasts Piri Reis depicted. So what explains the map's accuracy elsewhere? Piri Reis was a brilliant synthesizer, weaving together Portuguese, Arab, and possibly even smuggled Spanish charts. His depiction of the Caribbean is so precise it likely came from a captured Columbus crewman. The mystery of the Piri Reis map isn't evidence of lost civilizations. It's a testament to the messy, collaborative nature of early modern mapmaking, where guesswork and genius bled into each other. Yet the map's allure endures. Folded into its faded ink are bigger questions. How much knowledge vanished when the Library of Alexandria burned? How many sailors' tales were dismissed as fantasy? Piri Reis might not have held a chart of ice-free Antarctica, but his map reminds us that history's gaps are always more tantalizing than its certainties. And sometimes the most seductive mysteries aren't clues to the past, they're mirrors, reflecting our own hunger for hidden truths. Deep in the frozen heart of Siberia's Altai Mountains, a cave yielded a discovery so small it fit on a fingertip, yet its implications were earth-shaking. In 2010, archaeologists sifting through Denisova Cave's layers of ancient debris found a sliver of bone no bigger than a sesame seed. At first glance, it seemed insignificant among the cave's trove of tools and animal remains. But when geneticists extracted its DNA, they uncovered an entire chapter of human history we never knew existed. This was no ordinary bone fragment. It belonged to a young girl who died 40,000 years ago, a girl who was neither Homo sapiens nor Neanderthal, but something entirely new, a Denisovan. The DNA results read like science fiction. Comparing the genetic code to modern humans revealed startling overlaps. Living populations in Southeast Asia and Oceania, particularly indigenous groups in Papua New Guinea and the Philippines, carried traces of Denisovan ancestry. Even more astonishing, the girl's genome showed her people had interbred not just with us, but with Neanderthals too. Suddenly, the story of human evolution wasn't a simple family tree. It was a tangled web of migrations, encounters, and genetic exchanges we're only beginning to unravel. What made this discovery so revolutionary was its method. Unlike traditional paleontology, where fossils guide the research, the Denisovan breakthrough came from molecules invisible to the naked eye. The bone itself was too fragmentary to reveal much morphologically, No skull shape or tooth structure to analyze, but its DNA painted a vivid portrait: dark skin, brown hair and eyes, and adaptations to high-altitude hypoxia still found in modern Tibetans. This wasn't just a new cousin in the human family, it was a lineage that had shaped our own biology in ways we'd never suspected. Then came the artifacts. Mixed with Denisovan remains were sophisticated stone bracelets and needles, suggesting these weren't primitive brutes but innovators. A marble bracelet carved from veined green chlorite showed precision drilling and polishing techniques rivaling those of later Cro-Magnons. How could a species we'd never even known about until 2010 have mastered such skills? The answer might lie in the cave's strategic location, a crossroads where Denisovans, Neanderthals, and early humans likely exchanged not just genes but ideas. Yet the most haunting question remains: why did they vanish? Climate shifts, competition with Homo sapiens, or even absorption into our gene pool through interbreeding could all be culprits. What's certain is that the Denisovans didn't disappear completely. Their legacy lives on in the immune systems of modern Southeast Asians, in the oxygen-processing genes of Tibetan Highlanders, and in the tantalizing possibility that more of their bones, or even living cultural memories, might still be hiding in plain sight. That tiny sliver of Siberian bone didn't just add a new name to the human family album. It shattered the illusion that we've ever been alone on this planet. And somewhere in the DNA of millions today, the Denisovans whisper a reminder: history isn't just written by the survivors, it's woven into the very fabric of who we are. In 1936, a couple hiking near London, Texas, spotted an unusual rock jutting from a creek bed. When they cracked it open, they found something impossible: a hammer. Its wooden handle partially turned to coal, its iron head fused seamlessly into stone that geologists later dated to over 400 million years old. This was the London Hammer, an artifact that shouldn't exist, a modern tool trapped in ancient rock. For creationists, it became a smoking gun, proof that mainstream geology's timelines were catastrophically wrong. If a hammer could be encased in Ordovician strata, they argued, then perhaps the Earth was far younger than science claimed, but geologists had a different take. The hammer wasn't buried in primordial rock. It was encased in a mineral concretion, a hard, shell-like layer that forms when dissolved minerals like limestone cement around an object over centuries, not millennia. Concretions can mimic the appearance of much older rock, growing in decades under the right conditions. The hammer's handle, while partially fossilized, showed signs of rapid mineralization from Texas's iron-rich waters, a process documented in other artifacts from the 19th century. Even the coalification of the wood wasn't evidence of great age. Chemical reactions between tannins in the wood and minerals in the water can produce similar effects in just a few generations. The real mystery isn't the hammer's age, but how it ended up buried so deeply. One theory suggests it was lost by a miner or blacksmith in the 1800s, sinking into soft sediment that later hardened. Another points to flash floods, which can bury objects under layers of silt that cement quickly in Texas's arid climate. Either way, the London Hammer isn't a relic of antediluvian industry. It's a testament to how easily nature can play tricks on us, warping time's perception with chemistry and erosion. Yet the hammer's legend endures, a Rorschach test for belief. For some, it's evidence of a grand conspiracy; for others, a lesson in scientific humility. What makes it fascinating isn't the artifact itself, but the questions it forces us to ask, not just about Earth's history, but about how we interpret the past when our assumptions collide with the unexpected. In the end, the London Hammer doesn't rewrite geology, it reveals how desperately we want the past to surprise us. Buried within the sands of Saqqara, near the tomb of a long-forgotten official, lay a wooden artifact so baffling it would ignite debates for centuries. Discovered in 1898 and dating to around 200 BC, the so-called Saqqara bird, looks like nothing else in Egyptian art, a sleek, streamlined figure with wings swept back like a falcon in mid-dive, but with a tail fin standing perfectly upright, eerily reminiscent of a modern aircraft stabilizer. At first dismissed as a simple toy or religious object, this 7-inch carving would later send shockwaves through the world of archaeology when an aeronautical engineer named Kolul Messiha examined it in 1972. To his trained eye, the proportions weren't just decorative, they were aerodynamic. When placed in a wind tunnel, replicas of the Saqqara bird demonstrated remarkable glide capabilities, its wings generating lift comparable to early 20th century gliders. The angle of its wings set at a precise dihedral mirrors designs used by the Wright brothers, while its flattened underside reduces drag, a feature ancient Egyptians couldn't have stumbled upon by accident. Even more startling, the artifact lacks the eyes, feathers, or legs typical of bird carvings from the period. Instead, its smooth curves and geometric precision suggest something far more mechanical, almost like a model. Skeptics argue it's merely a stylized bird, perhaps a ceremonial throw stick used in rituals, but the counter-evidence is compelling. Ancient Egyptian art is famously symbolic, yet no other bird depictions share this design. The tail fin, crucially, isn't just vertical, it's asymmetrical, thicker on one side to counteract torque, a detail irrelevant for a decorative piece but critical for stable flight. Some researchers speculate it might have been a child's toy, launched with a cord like a balsa glider, while others wonder if it's a scaled-down copy of a larger, functional craft lost to time. Theories spiral into controversy when you consider Egypt's other mysteries. The Abydos helicopter hieroglyphs' optical illusions caused by palimpsests nonetheless reveal how eager we are to find ancient tech in the past. Yet the Saqqara bird stands apart, its engineering too deliberate to dismiss. Aviation historian Simon Sanderson's experiments showed that with minor modifications, adding a rudder or adjusting the wing's camber, the artifact could achieve stable, controlled flight. Even if it wasn't meant to fly, the Saqqara bird forces us to ask, where did this design come from? Did some artisan glimpse a bird in a dive and instinctively carve its most efficient form? Or was there a lost thread of empirical aerodynamics passed down through generations before vanishing into the desert? Unlike fantastical claims of alien blueprints, this artifact sits in a gray zone, too advanced to ignore, too ambiguous to prove. The truth may never soar from the shadows, but the Saqqara bird remains a tantalizing whisper from the past, daring us to reconsider just how high ancient imaginations might have flown. High in the remote Bayan-Ha mountains of China, a discovery in 1938 would spiral into one of archaeology's most stubborn legends. According to a story that's been retold and distorted for decades, a team led by archaeologist Kai Pu-Te stumbled upon a series of caves, and inside, not just skeletons of unusually small, large-headed beings, but hundreds of stone discs, each about a foot wide, with a hole in the center and spiral grooves that, when examined closely, allegedly contained tiny, etched hieroglyphs. These were the Dropa stones, and the tale that grew around them was straight out of science fiction. The narrative took on a life of its own. Some versions claimed the inscriptions, once deciphered, told the story of an alien spacecraft crashing into the mountains 12,000 years ago, its survivors, the Dropa people, stranded and eventually fading into local tribes. Others insisted the discs had unusual electromagnetic properties or were made from materials unknown to Earth. The problem: no credible evidence of the stones or their extraterrestrial origins has ever surfaced. Not a single disc resides in a museum. No peer-reviewed studies support the translations. Even Kai Pu-Te's existence is murky. No academic records confirm him as a recognized archaeologist of the era. So how did this myth take root? The story first appeared in a 1962 German magazine article, then spread through UFO circles like wildfire. By the 70s, Soviet researchers supposedly analyzed the disks, claiming they vibrated at harmonic frequencies, another assertion impossible to verify. Linguistic experts who have examined the supposed translations point out glaring flaws. The script resembles neither ancient Chinese nor any known writing system, and the story's details shift dramatically with each retelling. What's fascinating isn't the hoax itself, but why it endures. The Dropa stones tap into a universal craving for hidden history's proof that we're not alone, or that advanced civilizations existed long before recorded time. They're a Rorschach test for belief, reflecting our willingness to accept extraordinary claims when they fill gaps in the human story. And in an age where misinformation spreads faster than fact, the Dropa stones serve as a cautionary tale. Sometimes the most persistent mysteries aren't relics of the past, but creations of our own imagination, chiseled not in stone but in our longing for the unexplainable. Beneath a quiet Scottish field in 1965, archaeologists made a heartbreaking decision. They buried one of Europe's most mysterious ancient artifacts to save it from vandalism. For 50 years, the Cochno Stone lay hidden under layers of soil, its secrets locked away. Then in 2015, researchers returned to uncover it once more, revealing a 5,000-year-old sandstone slab the size of a car, its surface covered in swirling spirals, geometric shapes, and mysterious cup marks carved by Neolithic hands. What makes the Cochno Stone so mesmerizing isn't just its age, it's the sheer density of its symbols. Over 90 intricate carvings spiral outward like cosmic fingerprints, some interlocking like celestial maps, others radiating like sunbursts. The most striking feature, a pair of deep, foot-shaped indentations near the center, as if the stone was meant for ritual standing or dancing. Archaeologists have debated its purpose for decades. One theory suggests it's a prehistoric astronomical calendar, with cup marks tracking lunar cycles or solstices. Others see a sacred portal, the spirals symbolizing life, death, and rebirth, echoing designs found in Irish passage graves like Newgrange. The stone's burial wasn't just an act of preservation, it was a race against time. By the mid-20th century, urban expansion and souvenir hunters had left the Cochno Stone scarred with modern graffiti. When archaeologists reburied it, they were protecting not just the carvings, but the chance to study it with future technology. Fast forward to 2015. Using 3D laser scanning, researchers created a digital map so precise it revealed previously invisible details. Faint lines connecting the spirals, suggesting they might form a larger, cohesive design. Modern comparisons only deepen the mystery. Similar spiral motifs appear on Bronze Age weapons and Celtic jewelry, hinting at a shared symbolic language across millennia. But the Cochno Stone scale is unmatched. Was it an open-air temple, a communal storytelling surface, or something more unsettling? Local folklore whispers of the stone as a fairy hill, a place where the veil between worlds was thin. Some carvings even resemble crude human figures, leading to speculation about sacrificial rites or ancestor veneration. What's certain is that the Cochno Stone refuses to fit neatly into history's boxes. Unlike burial cairns or standing stones, its purpose wasn't monumental, it was interactive. The wear patterns around the foot carvings suggest generations of use, while the stone's alignment with nearby hills implies a landscape-wide ritual significance. Today, it lies protected under a layer of permeable mesh, its secrets half revealed, half concealed. The greatest lesson it offers might be this: some ancient mysteries weren't meant to be solved, only witnessed. Hidden beneath the quiet villages of Zhejiang province in China lies a labyrinth so vast and precise, it defies the technological capabilities of its time. Discovered in 1992 when a curious farmer drained a local pond, the Longyu Caves emerged from the darkness, 24 hand-carved caverns sprawling across nearly 900,000 square feet, their ceilings towering nearly 100 feet high in some places. Every inch of these chambers tells a story of unimaginable labor. Walls chiseled with uniform grooves in perfect parallel lines, massive pillars left standing at mathematically calculated intervals, and staircases descending into shadows with steps so precise they rival modern masonry. Yet despite their grandeur, not a single historical record, folk tale, or even passing mention in ancient texts acknowledges their existence. What makes these caves so baffling isn't just their scale, it's the logistics. Archaeologists estimate that removing the estimated 1 million cubic meters of stone would have required 1,000 workers laboring day and night for 6 years straight. But here's the catch: no debris from the excavation has ever been found. No rubble piles, no discarded tools, not even a trace of the limestone's distinctive dust in nearby soil samples. It's as if the rock simply vanished. The precision is another enigma. The chisel marks follow a consistent 60-degree angle across every surface, a technique requiring not just skill but an almost assembly line level of standardization, something unheard of in the supposed primitive tools of 2,000 years ago. Theories about their purpose spiral from the practical to the fantastical. Some scholars propose they were imperial quarries, yet no other structures in the region use this specific stone. Others suggest they served as secret military bunkers, but the caves lack defensive features or storage areas. The most haunting hypothesis: they were ceremonial spaces designed to mimic mythical underworlds described in ancient Chinese cosmology. The walls' swirling patterns mirror traditional depictions of the 9 springs, where souls journeyed after death, while the absence of records might hint at a deliberately suppressed ritual practice. Modern technology only deepens the puzzle. Laser scans reveal that the cave's layouts align with celestial events. Solstice sunlight pierces certain chambers at precise angles, while acoustic testing shows the grooved walls amplify sound in eerie, resonant frequencies. Local legends whisper of a vanished tribe who dug into the earth to escape the heavens, but without written evidence, the caves remain a silent monument to a mystery we may never solve. Standing in these caverns today, you're left with a chilling realization. 2 millennia ago, someone orchestrated one of history's most ambitious engineering feats, then erased all memory of it. The Longyu Caves aren't just tunnels in rock. They're a question carved in stone, demanding to know how much of humanity's past has been lost to the shadows of time. In the summer of 1957, a team of amateur archaeologists sifting through a Native American shell midden on the coast of Maine uncovered something that should never have been there: a small, weathered silver coin bearing the unmistakable stamp of a medieval Norse king. Known as the Maine Penny, this 11th century artifact unearthed at the Goddard site sent shockwaves through the archaeological community. Minted between 1065 and 1080 CE during the reign of King Olaf Kyrre of Norway, the coin's presence in a pre-Columbian Wabanaki settlement raised a tantalizing possibility. Had Norse explorers ventured farther south than Vinland, leaving traces of contact centuries before Columbus? The initial excitement quickly collided with skepticism. The Goddard site was a bustling native trade hub active between 1200 and 1350 CE, a timeline that technically allowed for the coin's arrival during the Norse Greenland colony's peak. But here's the catch: no other Norse artifacts were found nearby. No tools, no ship fragments, not even a single corroborating item to suggest sustained interaction. The coin stood alone, a quiet enigma in a sea of indigenous pottery and tools. Proponents of the Norse contact theory point to the coin's wear pattern as critical evidence. Its edges were smooth from extensive handling, suggesting it circulated among native trade networks long before Europeans officially arrived. Some speculate it could have traveled south through indigenous trade routes after being acquired in Newfoundland, where the Norse settlement at Elance Ox Meadows proves their presence. Others propose it might have been lost by a lone Norse trader venturing down the coast, perhaps bartering with Wabanaki communities for furs or other goods. But doubt lingers like fog over the North Atlantic. The coin was discovered by volunteers, not professional archaeologists, and its exact stratigraphic context remains unclear. Could it have been dropped or planted in modern times? Coin collectors were active in the region by the early 20th century, and Norse artifacts were already famous thanks to Viking sagas. Even the site's excavator, Dr. Warren K. Moorhead, initially dismissed the find as probably a hoax. Modern metallurgy adds another wrinkle. The Maine Penny's silver content matches Norwegian coins of the period, but without organic material attached like fibers from a decayed pouch, it's impossible to definitively rule out modern contamination. The most damning evidence against the Norse contact theory: the complete absence of Norse DNA in regional indigenous populations, a stark contrast to the genetic legacy left by later European colonizers. What makes the Maine Penny so compelling isn't just the question of authenticity, it's what the debate reveals about how history gets written. For decades, the idea of pre-Columbian transatlantic contact was dismissed as fringe speculation. But as more evidence emerges from Norse yarn in Arctic Canada to potential Viking structures under peat bogs in Newfoundland, the Maine Penny forces us to reconsider the boundaries of possibility. Maybe it's not an all-or-nothing scenario. Perhaps the coin traveled not on a Viking longship, but in the pocket of a Micmac trader who acquired it through generations of exchanges, a single thread in a vast and forgotten web of connections. The Maine Penny sits today in the Maine State Museum, labeled cautiously as probably authentic. It's a tiny object with outsized implications, a reminder that history's most disruptive stories often come not from grand monuments but from quiet anomalies, the kind that refuse to fit neatly into the narratives we've crafted. Whether it's proof of Norse wanderers or just a red herring, it challenges us to keep digging because the past always has another secret to spill. High on the walls of Egypt's Temple of Seti I at Abydos, a series of hieroglyphs stopped archaeologists mid-stride because etched into the ancient stone was what appeared to be a helicopter, a submarine, and even a futuristic aircraft. This so-called Abydos helicopter became an overnight sensation among fringe theorists who saw it as undeniable proof of time travel or lost advanced technology. But the truth lurking beneath these carvings is far stranger than fiction, revealing how easily the past can be misread when history literally overwrites itself. The key to unraveling this mystery lies in a common Egyptian practice called palimpsest, the recycling of sacred stone. When Pharaoh Seti I commissioned this temple around 1300 BCE, his artisans carved elaborate titles and scenes into the walls. A century later, his grandson Ramses II needed to assert his own legacy, so workers plastered over Seti's inscriptions and chiseled new ones in their place. Over millennia, the plaster crumbled away, leaving ghostly fragments of both kings' hieroglyphs superimposed on one another. What we're seeing isn't a helicopter, but the accidental collision of two separate carvings: Seti's original text describing his military victories and Ramses' later edits praising his own reign. Modern imaging technology confirms the illusion. When researchers digitally separated the layers, Seti's carving of a "he who repulses the 9 bows," a traditional epithet for pharaohs, became visible. Ramses' artisans had partially recarved the same space to spell "he who protects Egypt and overthrows foreign lands." The overlapping strokes, a bird glyph here, a serpent there, created entirely new shapes that resemble mechanical objects only when viewed through modern eyes. That helicopter, a distorted blend of a bee hieroglyph, an arm holding a scepter, and the curve of a reed boat. The submarine is a mishmash of a sun disk and a staff of authority. What makes the Abydos glyphs so fascinating isn't just the optical illusion, it's what they reveal about how history gets distorted. Our brains are wired to seek patterns, especially familiar ones. Show a 21st century human overlapping symbols, and we'll inevitably spot shapes from our own world. The same phenomenon occurs with pareidolia, seeing faces in clouds, or the Virgin Mary on a piece of toast. The ancient Egyptians would have been baffled by our interpretations. To them, these were just words, not premonitions of technology. Yet the legend persists, fueled by our desire for the unexplained. The Abydos helicopter has appeared in documentaries, books, and conspiracy forums as evidence mainstream archaeology can't debunk, except it has repeatedly. Epigraphers point to neighboring panels where the same palimpsest effect creates less controversial shapes, proving the phenomenon is consistent across the temple. Even the positioning makes sense. Ramses edits cluster near royal titles, exactly where a usurper would want to emphasize his connection to Seti while promoting his own glory. The real lesson here isn't about ancient astronauts, it's about humility. The Abydos glyphs remind us that history is rarely a clean, linear narrative. It's a palimpsest itself, with layers of interpretation, accident, and revision. Sometimes a helicopter is just a bee, a boat, and 3,000 years of crumbling plaster waiting for the right light to trick us into seeing what we desperately want to believe. Buried in the banks of Romania's Mureș River, a corroded chunk of metal would ignite one of archaeology's fiercest debates. In 1974, workers digging a trench near the town of Aiud stumbled upon three mysterious objects: two fossilized mastodon bones and a wedge-shaped piece of metal, all embedded in a layer of sediment dated to around 20,000 years old. At first glance, the metal artifact seemed unremarkable, its surface pitted with age. But when researchers cleaned it, they revealed something that shouldn't have existed: 90% pure aluminum, a metal that wasn't smelted by humans until the 19th century. Cue the conspiracy theories. If this wedge was truly as ancient as the mastodon bones beside it, it would rewrite technological history, hinting at a lost civilization with industrial knowledge millennia ahead of its time. Some even speculated it was a landing gear fragment from a crashed alien spacecraft. The artifact's design fueled the fire. Its flattened, aerodynamic shape and symmetrical grooves looked eerily deliberate, like a tool or part of a larger machine. For decades, the Aiud artifact became a rallying point for alternative historians, who saw it as definitive proof that mainstream archaeology was ignoring uncomfortable truths. But metallurgists have a different take. When scientists analyzed the wedge's composition in the 21st century, they found traces of alloys common in 20th century aircraft, particularly German planes from World War II. The key clue: a thin layer of aluminum oxide coating the metal, consistent with rapid oxidation from high heat exposure, like an aircraft part burning upon impact. Historical records add weight to this theory. Romania was a battleground during the war, littered with downed planes, and the Mureș River's shifting currents could easily have buried debris deep enough to mix with ancient layers over time. Then there's the mastodon bones. While initially dated to the Pleistocene epoch, later examinations suggested they might have been much younger, possibly displaced from their original context by natural erosion or human activity. Without a clear, undisturbed stratigraphic link between the bones and the metal, the case for an ancient origin crumbles. Even the wedge's mysterious shape isn't unique. It matches industrial fasteners or excavator teeth used in mid-century construction, exactly the kind of equipment that might have been operating near the river when the artifact was found. What makes the Aiud artifact so compelling isn't its extraterrestrial backstory, but the psychology behind our fascination with it. We're drawn to outliers, to objects that defy categorization because they hint at a grander, more mysterious past. But sometimes the simplest explanation, a war relic, a dating error, a quirk of geology, is the most revolutionary of all. The wedge's true lesson, that history's most tantalizing puzzles often lie not in the artifact itself, but in our willingness to question the stories we've been told. Off the coast of Japan's Yonaguni Island, beneath 60 feet of crystal-clear water, lies a formation that looks like it was ripped from the pages of a lost civilization novel. Massive terraced steps, sharp right angles, and what appears to be a grand staircase rise from the ocean floor, a sprawling complex so precise it's been dubbed the Yonaguni Monument. Discovered in 1986 by a diver searching for hammerhead shark migration routes, this structure has divided experts for decades. Is it the remnants of an ancient city swallowed by rising seas, or just a breathtaking quirk of geology? Marine geologists point to the region's active seismic history to explain the monument's uncanny geometry. The sandstone formations here are prone to fracturing along natural plains, creating blocky, angular shapes that mimic human craftsmanship. Ocean currents, they argue, could have eroded softer layers, leaving behind what looks like carved platforms and pillars. The rock's composition, a mix of sandstone and mudstone, naturally breaks into flat surfaces, which might account for the monument's stare-like tiers. Even the so-called carved faces and roadways could be the result of tidal erosion and coral growth, wearing away at the stone in patterns that trick the eye. But dive deeper and the plot thickens. Proponents of the man-made theory highlight details that defy easy geological explanation. Near the base of the monument, a pair of perfectly circular holes, each about 2 feet wide, pierce the rock, a feature rarely seen in natural formations. Nearby, what appears to be a carved relief of a turtle sits atop one platform, its outline too deliberate to dismiss as random erosion, most compelling. The monument's alignment, the main terraces face true north, mirroring the precision of ancient megalithic sites like Giza. Could this be coincidence or evidence of intentional design? The debate hinges on timelines. If human hands shaped Yonaguni, it would have to date back to a time when the area was above sea level, at least 10,000 years ago, before melting glaciers drowned the continental shelves. That places it in the realm of Göbekli Tepe, predating known complex civilizations by millennia. But here's the catch: no tools, pottery, or other artifacts have been found nearby. Without these smoking guns, the monument lingers in limbo, a riddle wrapped in coral and currents. Perhaps the most intriguing clue comes from the surrounding seabed. Sonar mapping reveals similar geometric formations stretching for miles, suggesting Yonaguni might not be an isolated anomaly. Could these be the ruins of a vast sunken city, or merely an extended example of nature's sculpting power? Even skeptics admit the site's allure is undeniable. When filmmaker James Cameron explored the monument for a documentary, he noted, "It's hard to look at those right angles and not feel like you're walking through someone's home." The truth may lie somewhere between the extremes. Some researchers propose a middle ground, that Yonaguni began as a natural formation, later modified by ancient humans for ceremonial or practical purposes. This enhanced nature theory aligns with global examples like the caves of Cappadocia, where geology and human ingenuity intertwine, until divers uncover definitive proof. A tool mark, an inscription, or a buried artifact, Yonaguni will remain one of the ocean's great enigmas. What's certain is this: whether carved by tectonic forces or forgotten hands, the monument forces us to reconsider the boundaries of human history. It's a reminder that the sea, our planet's greatest museum, still holds galleries we've barely begun to explore. And somewhere off Yonaguni's shores, the waves keep whispering a question: how much of our past is still waiting beneath the tide? In the quiet backrooms of Bolivia's Museo de Metales Preciosos, a clay bowl sits behind glass, its surface etched with markings that shouldn't exist. Known as the Fuente Magna Bowl, this unassuming artifact was discovered in the 1950s near Lake Titicaca, far from the deserts of Mesopotamia, yet its inscriptions bear a startling resemblance to Sumerian cuneiform, the world's oldest known writing system. For proponents of ancient transoceanic contact, it's a smoking gun, proof that civilizations separated by oceans might have traded knowledge millennia before Columbus. But for mainstream archaeologists, it's a riddle wrapped in controversy, one that pits tantalizing possibilities against the rigid rules of evidence. What makes the bowl so provocative isn't just its script, it's the context. Sumerian cuneiform flourished in modern-day Iraq around 3000 BCE, while the Fuente Magna Bowl's origins trace to the Tiwanaku culture, which thrived over 8,000 miles away and thousands of years later. The inscriptions, though fragmentary, include symbols resembling Sumerian glyphs for gods and temple, alongside geometric patterns common in Andean art. Some researchers argue the bowl could be a hybrid object crafted by locals who'd encountered Sumerian traders or migrants. Others go further, suggesting it's a relic of a lost global network, a time when ancient mariners crossed oceans we assume were impassable. Skeptics, however, dismantle these theories piece by piece. They note that the bowl's provenance is shaky. It was reportedly found by a farmer, with no documented excavation or stratigraphic data to confirm its age. The cuneiform markings, while visually similar, lack the grammatical structure of genuine Sumerian writing. Linguists point out that symbols can converge by chance. The Olmec word jaguar motifs, for instance, bear passing resemblance to Chinese characters, but no one claims trans-Pacific contact based on that alone. Even the bowl's material raises red flags. Its clay composition matches local sources, suggesting it wasn't imported. The debate sharpened when biologist and amateur epigrapher Clyde Winters attempted a translation in the early 2000s, proposing the text honored a Sumerian fertility goddess. Mainstream Assyriologists dismissed his work as imaginative but methodologically flawed, citing misidentified signs and speculative leaps. Meanwhile, Bolivian archaeologists like Bernardo Biodos argue the bowl reflects indigenous symbolism misread through a Eurocentric lens, a case of pareidolia where familiar shapes are projected onto unfamiliar designs. Yet the Fuente Magna Bowl refuses to be ignored. Recent imaging techniques reveal tool marks consistent with ancient engraving methods, not modern forgeries. And while the script may not be pure cuneiform, it's undeniably systematic, a far cry from random scratches. Could it represent a localized adaptation of writing inspired by fleeting contact, or does it hint at a broader, untold story of cultural exchange, one that archaeology simply hasn't pieced together yet? What's certain is this: the bowl forces us to confront how little we know about pre-Columbian connections. History isn't a series of isolated bubbles, but a tapestry of chance encounters and forgotten routes. Whether the Fuente Magna Bowl is a misunderstood masterpiece, a hoax, or a relic of something grander, it's a reminder that the past still holds pockets of resistance artifacts that dare us to reconsider the boundaries of the ancient world. In the icy depths of the Baltic Sea, a sonar image set the world ablaze with speculation. In June 2011, a Swedish diving team led by Peter Lindberg was scanning the seafloor for shipwrecks when their equipment picked up something utterly bizarre: a 60-meter-wide, disc-shaped object resting 300 feet below the surface, its smooth contours and unnaturally symmetrical edges resembling nothing so much as the Millennium Falcon from Star Wars. Dubbed the Baltic Sea Anomaly, this enigma spawned wild theories overnight: a crashed UFO, a lost piece of Atlantis, even a submerged Nazi anti-submarine device. But when divers finally reached the site, the truth proved stranger than any sci-fi plot. The initial dive only deepened the mystery. While the sonar suggested a flawless metallic disc, up close the structure revealed bizarre contradictions. Its surface was covered in soot-like black streaks, as if scorched by extreme heat, yet samples showed no traces of combustion. More puzzling still were the stair-like formations leading up the side, perfectly straight edges that looked almost architectural. Divers reported their compasses spinning wildly near the object, fueling speculation about unnatural magnetic properties. Then came the kicker: a trail of loose rocks stretched behind it like a skid mark, as if the anomaly had slid or been dragged across the seabed. Geologists rushed to debunk the extraterrestrial hype. They pointed to the region's glacial history, arguing the anomaly was likely a rare but natural formation, a glacial erratic, perhaps smoothed by ancient ice sheets and left behind when the glaciers retreated. The stairs, parallel ridges carved by shifting ice, the magnetic disturbances, the area was littered with volcanic rock rich in magnetite, a mineral that plays havoc with compasses. Even the disc shape wasn't unprecedented. Underwater erosional features often mimic man-made designs, but the anomaly refused to fit neatly into either camp. Lab tests on recovered samples revealed metals like iron and manganese common in seabed geology, but also traces of titanium, a material prized in aerospace for its strength. The divers' most persistent claim that their equipment malfunctioned only near the object was dismissed as coincidence until multiple expeditions reported identical issues. Then there were the odd circular indentations dotting the surface, resembling nothing in the geologist's playbook. The debate crystallized around a single question: was this proof of human history rewritten, or just nature's talent for mimicry? Alternative researchers pointed to similarities with underwater megalithic sites like Yonaguni, while mainstream scientists cited examples like the Magic Boulder of Massachusetts, a naturally occurring geometric rock once mistaken for an artifact. The truth might lie somewhere in between. Some marine archaeologists speculate the anomaly could be a heavily eroded World War II sonar decoy designed to confuse enemy submarines, though no records confirm such devices in the area. What makes the Baltic Sea Anomaly so compelling isn't the lack of answers, it's the questions it forces us to ask about how we interpret the unknown. Our eyes and instruments are trained to see patterns, to impose narratives on the ambiguous. Sometimes those patterns reveal lost histories, other times they're Rorschach tests for our imagination. As the anomaly silently gathers barnacles in the Baltic's darkness, it serves as a reminder that the line between discovery and delusion is as shifting as the sands covering it, and that the sea, history's greatest keeper of secrets, still has a few tricks left to play. History isn't a dusty shelf of unchanging facts, it's a living, breathing puzzle, constantly reshaped by the next discovery. From the Antikythera Mechanism's celestial gears to the silent whispers of the Denisovan bone fragment, each of these revelations proves that the past is far stranger, far more advanced, and far more mysterious than we've ever been taught. Think about it. Every time a farmer's shovel strikes an ancient artifact or a diver's light glints off a long-lost relic, another crack forms in the tidy narratives we've built. The Terracotta Army rewrote China's story. The Dead Sea Scrolls unraveled biblical certainties. Even the humble Baghdad battery forced us to ask, how much genius have we underestimated? What ties all these discoveries together isn't just their shock value, it's the humility they demand. For centuries, we've assumed our ancestors were primitive, their technologies rudimentary, their knowledge limited. But the evidence keeps proving otherwise. The precision of Göbekli Tepe's pillars, the astronomical brilliance of the Nazca Lines, the eerie sophistication of the Saqqara bird, they all whisper the same truth. Humanity's potential has always been greater than we dared to imagine. And if we've been wrong about so much already, what else might still be buried, waiting to upend everything we think we know? That's the real thrill of history's secrets. They don't just change the past, they change us. They force us to question who gets to write the story, whose achievements get remembered, and whose voices have been erased. The next time you read a history book or watch a documentary, remember, every fact is just a best guess, one accidental find away from being rewritten. So let's turn the page to you. Which of these discoveries left you reeling? Was it the Viking coin in Maine that hints at transatlantic trade long before Columbus, the submerged enigma of Yonaguni daring us to reconsider ancient seafaring? Or the tiny gears of the Antikythera Mechanism, a masterpiece of engineering lost to time? Drop your vote in the comments. We're obsessed with these debates, and your perspective might just spark the next deep dive. And if you're hungry for more mysteries, hit that subscribe button. From forgotten cities to suppressed inventions, we're just getting started. After all, history's greatest secret might still be waiting to be uncovered, and the next groundbreaking discovery could land in our next video. Stay curious, the past isn't finished surprising us yet.